2017. I'd like to call this meeting to order and move to a roll call.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Great, thank you much, appreciate it. Yeah, it wasn't on, but that's all right. We got it, there's a quorum, we appreciate it. At this time, we'd like to move to item 3.2. Going to hear reports on meetings and or conferences attended by the council. Council? Huh? Oh, sorry. Thought we already done that. Boy, I'm in a rush tonight, aren't I? Trying to get us out of here. All right, let's start with 3.1. Let's try that. Okay, we're going to review items on the regular city council meeting agenda. My apologies, council, didn't mean to rush past that. Council members. Yes, Councilmember Chapados.
Mayor, I just want to point out that on item 9.6, approving the liquor permits, only one date was included in the packet. I understand that there's no problem with approving all of the dates.
Yes, Councilmember Chapados, they submitted an application for each one of them, and so I had to redact every single one, and the only thing that changed was the date in each one, so I listed the date and included one application.
Okay, that's fine. And then I'd like to have 9.8 pulled, please.
9.8 pulled. So we'll move 9.8 to the front of the council agenda. Okay. Yes, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'd like to talk briefly about 10.2 and 10.3.
Okay. Now those are on regular.
Those are on regular. Do you want to wait till regular?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason, I mean, we're going to get to that in full discussion if that's okay, unless you have.
It's not a problem for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I just like to make it sure that you're aware that I want to talk about them in regards to that, in case we can save time during work session, et
Okay.
cetera. But that's fine with me.
Yeah, we're going to get to them in full
Okay.
discussion. I think this is more than anything for consent in case somebody wanted something off of that.
Sure,
and have
no problem. Thank you.
More discussion there.
Yep, nope.
Okay. Anyone else at this time have questions
Mr.
or
Mayor?
concerns? Yes.
I just had a change to 9.4. It just
9.4.
was the 9.4 is the cooperative purchase agreement with Core Construction.
Right.
The bid was $37,000 with a contingency of $6,575. The staff report had all that in there. We were just changing on the first page of the agreement that says that the total compensation of the agreement will not exceed $43,575, which is the 37 plus the contingency, just so that's clear. And then Core, since we made that change, asked for an additional sentence in that paragraph 3 that just says markups for contractor fee and taxes will be applied by the contractor at the time the owner's contingency is used. So I think if there is changes, it'll come out of the contingency.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions on that, council? Okay. Great. Yes.
Say that last sentence again, Dennis.
What?
About something coming out of contingency.
Oh, it was just a sentence that just talks about markups for contractors' fee and taxes will be applied by the contractor at the time that owner contingency is used.
Okay, and the key word there for me is owner, meaning
Right.
it's coming out of that department's budget. They have a contingency.
It would be the contingency out of this contract if it was used.
Is it the contract contingency? Is that what we're talking about, or is
Can you turn that mic on, Bill?
Thank you. Through the mayor, Councilman Smith, what happened, these are essentially cost plus contracts, so they charge us the cost plus the markup on it. If we use contingency, they will also apply the markup to the cost in the contingency. So if we add a doorway that's $200 and the markup is 20%, they will add $40 to the $200 for the cost, but that will come out of contingency. That's all it means, is that they'll apply markup to costs, whether they're owner contingency requested changes or in the base cost.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Smith, the contingency that they're referring to is the contingency that was created for the project.
right? That's what I wanted to know. Thank you. That's how I interpreted it. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Any other questions this time? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. Appreciate it. That takes us to 3.2. Now we're going to hear reports on meetings and conferences attended. Council, time is yours. Yes, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. just two things to talk about that were really, a lot of fun and actually very interesting. So the fun one was the MCE pitch competition that several of us attended. And it's the first year that MCE has provided this type of a competition. I believe they ended up with 5 or 6 applicants, and they all pitched their business, which is awesome for the city of Maricopa, right? That if we have someone pitching a business and we have MCE to help them grow that business, it makes for an opportunity for, various things, tax revenue, employment, jobs, and those types of things. So it was a really good start to a first-time presentation, and they ended up awarding one of the businesses as the winner of the competition. I look forward to the future and what this has to bring to the city of Maricopa, because I have high hopes that it can actually develop into something really exciting for the city of Maricopa. So I wanted to let you know about that, and there's a lot of information in the press about it if you want to find some more information. The second thing is, I attended this morning the Chamber Government Committee for our Chamber of Commerce, and this is the second meeting, but the best meeting so far. And what was really neat is all of the information. Chief Stahl was there sharing information about safety in businesses. We had our government liaison there, and he was talking about various government aspects and legislation. And then we had our county supervisor there talking about the RTA. And then I brought up a couple subjects for the city for the businesses to consider. But the important thing for me to bring out tonight, and I'm not sure exactly what we as a city can do about it or what direction we want to head, there is so much confusion regarding the RTA. And, I know one publication came out that basically has some right information, some wrong information. And it really had an impact on our community. There's a lot of buzz out there. These are people that were participating on this committee for the chamber that are in the know. And it had the possibility of changing people's minds for these people that are on this board. So a lot of good clarification information came out regarding the RTA. And I think we have to see if there's a way for the city to provide some of that factual information. I know we can't go based on opinion, but there's a lot of misinformation with even very well-informed citizens, businesses, owners, and so we have to find a way to correct the wrong information that's out there. And so that was very eye-opening, because I knew based on Facebook and things like that, there are a lot of bad conversations on Facebook with wrong information, but you're like, all right, how many people does that really touch? But when it's touching people who have good knowledge of the city and good information in many other areas of the city, then we got to do something about it. So, important information. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Chapados.
Just for everybody's information, you can get this pamphlet along with frequently asked questions on the RTA in our lobby.
Thank you. Others would like to make reports at this time? No one? Yes, Councilmember Wade.
I don't want to steal their thunder because I think there's going to be folks coming during the regular session, but I attended a planning session for a group of Maricopa citizens that have put together something called the Copa Central Command Texas Donation Drive. And so I just want to make mention that we attended it. It was very well attended. Probably about 25, 30 people were there, and everybody's active and ready to go. So we'll hear more about that during the regular session. But it was a good meeting to attend. Good to see Maricopa doing what Maricopa does.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyone else at this time? Okay, we will move on then. That'll take us to item 3.3. We're going to hear and discuss a presentation by Chief of Police Steve Stahl on the Maricopa Police Department's Unmanned Aerial System, or UAS, program. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor Price, Vice Mayor Brown, members of council. I am not going to do much talking tonight. I'm going to leave this to one of our newest members of our department. And the purpose of why we're here kind of delves into what Councilmember Smith said. regarding misinformation and clarifying misinformation. The word drone gets thrown around a lot, and what we want to make sure that you all understand is, one, this, while it doesn't look small, is a small unmanned aerial system. And those are key words because it's determined to be small and it's a system. It's not just something that flies around. And these gentlemen will explain that to you here in a little bit. One of the reasons why we're here is because as an agency that is staffed bare to the bones all the time, we have to look for ways to accentuate our resources, our manpower resources. This morning, as you all know, we had a young gentleman decide that he didn't want to go to school, and it took us 4.5 hours to find him. Had we had this system available to us, I reckon that we probably would have found him in an hour to an hour and a half had we had this system up. It will help us utilize our resources better, and that's just one example of how we can do that. These gentlemen will explain to you what it is not, and then we'll kind of open it up to questions for you. You all know Ricky Alvarado. He is kind of the driving force with our police department as far as urging me, prodding me, and getting me to sign off on a small unmanned aerial system. And one of the other guiding forces that made me feel a whole lot better about it is retired Chief of Police Louis Martinez, who is the Maricopa Police Department's Chief Flight Officer. He is actually has a pilot's license, and he is training our personnel on how to utilize this system appropriately. So I leave it to PIO Alvarado, Chief Martinez.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, members of council, thank you for having me here today. As Chief alluded to, we have in the audience here our Chief Pilot, Luis Martinez. He comes with us for over 30 years of experience in law enforcement. He is training our unit to be able to take the Part 107 test, which is scheduled for October. I am the PIO for the department, also the manager over the UAS unit. So I'm going to go into a brief PowerPoint. Please bear with me, it's kind of dry. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to keep you entertained. So we're going to get into important terms and definitions: UAS, unmanned aircraft systems, unmanned aerial vehicles, and remote piloted vehicles. Course objectives: to define a UAS and technology limitations, explain Part 107, community engagement, and how the unit was created, the testing that was involved, and the schooling that's going forward. So as Chief mentioned, this is not a small unmanned aircraft system. This is a drone. What makes this a drone is the capability, the distance it can fly, and the weaponry it carries. This is an SUAS, which is the one you see here, the Matrice 600. The application that we have for this Matrice 600 gives us redundancy with 6 blades. As you can see, the smaller one next to it is the DJI Phantom 2. It's only got 4 blades, and I'll get into some more technical there. What is an unmanned aircraft system? Remote control airplane, helicopters, or airships. It's less than 55 gross weight under Part 107. This particular unit's about 35 pounds, as is. Less than 100 miles an hour with at top speed under Part 107. This one is about 55 miles an hour. Now here's where the technology comes into play with what we currently have. Capabilities of downloading data, still pictures, video, FLIR systems, and environmental sampling. This unit has the ability to take full spectrum pictures at a 3x zoom. It also has a FLIR system on board. The application as you see it now isn't completed. It's got to go back to the manufacturer to have a special plate put on it that will allow us to have 2 cameras, a FLIR system camera operating and a full spectrum camera while it's being used. When it flies, you'll have 2 pilots. You'll have an actual pilot that's flying, keeping visual on the unit itself, and you'll have an observer that's watching the cameras and kind of telling the pilot, hey, left, right, and radioing the officers on the ground if we needed it for that application. For the environmental sampling, it can be outfitted with different types of equipment to determine if we had some type of a train derailment, if we had some kind of a fire, what is coming out of there, what is burning, to be able to tell us, hey, this is what you need to wear, this is where you need to stay away, radius, so on and so forth.
Ricky, what does FLIR stand for?
forward-looking infrared radar. So it has the ability to basically determine your body heat. It has 5 different spectrums of light: white hot, red hot, green hot, just different ways it's able to determine your body heat and your body temperature and determine it from anything that's cold, footprints, and we'll get into a picture that kind of shows the difference between the two. So first-person viewing, flight UAS solely based upon video downlink from aircraft, visual flight rules, VFRs, operating aircraft under visual conditions pursuant to the ceiling and visual requirements. 3 visual miles and 500 feet below cloud cover. That's the restrictions the FAA has in place. So basically I can see 3 miles out, and if it's cloudy, 500 feet below. Part 107, the new section of the federal regulations for UASs, it was implemented in August of 2016. So there's 4 ways to legally fly a UAS. Hobbyist use, they don't require what's called a COA or a certificate of authorization. Government use can use either a COA or Part 107. So where it's going to get a little technical, I apologize. So for a COA, the requirement basically is you declare as a public agency, you put in your paperwork to the FAA, you put in a flight plan or path, these are where we're going to fly, this is what we're going to do, and they can either accept it or deny it or ask you for more. I think the current time now is probably 3 to 6 months. I've seen some that have gone up to a year. The downside to this is, with the COA, you don't have to be a pilot. Anybody can fly as long as they're on that waiver and that information. Under Part 107, it gives us better training, better standards. Chief Martinez here is making sure that we're within standards and that our pilots, because they are technically remote aircraft pilots, have the training and exercise training on a yearly basis, monthly basis, whatever we decide that's going to be the training standards when it comes to that. And you can have a special airworthiness certificate, like 333, which is for commercial use exemptions. Those are people that use it to profit from it. They do realty, pictures, videography, so on and so forth. The UAS technology. So most UASs use brush electric motors. So there's no parts inside of it. They can withstand a long period of time before they have to be serviced. I believe the service time on this one's every 2 years. They have to be checked. Some also have internal combustion engines. Those are smaller types of planes. Batteries are lithium ion. They have high storage capability. They're low in weight. This particular unit has 6 batteries on board. And then it gives us some things. You don't leave them unattended. You don't charge them while they're hot. Sentry systems. So electric optical cameras, low light cameras, infrared cameras, multi-spectrum cameras, hyperspectral cameras, LiDAR, light detecting and ranging systems. With this particular unit, we have ability to download a program or get a program to it, which will be able to map accident scenes. We can map accident scenes quicker, upload them into our Faro system, and they'll be ready to go where it could take an hour or 2 hours to have a road closed. We can get this up and operational, take the measurements within 20 to 30 minutes, and get things open and get them moving. Gas camera methodologies, those basically are the same things that you can take air samples and tell us, hey, there was a fire from a train or whatever it may be, and this is what is emitting from that fire. And then radar sensors. It's a full spectrum camera view. So this is during the day. Our particular unit has a 3x zoom camera that's going to be on there, so we're able to zoom in on different objects, sometimes maybe even license plates or even people. The best part is the FLIR systems. As you can see here, this is in white hot. So the personnel that you see on the ground are emitting a heat that's different from the colder areas, so we're able to find the body temperature. It's even so sensitive you can see footprints that are left behind. Of course, there's limitations with everything. There's limitations that are with environment, such as wind, time of flight duration. This particular unit's about 35 minutes of flight time. But when it lands, we can set another set of batteries in it and send it up on its way. And by the time those batteries go dead, the other batteries are charged, and they can go back in and we can continue to fly. Max level flight speed, 35 miles an hour. It's FAA what they basically require on that. FAA limitations, generally below 400 feet. Anything higher than that, you need a waiver. Currently, the waivers we have for this are a night exemption waiver. We can fly this at night. And we could look to do other types of waivers. The good part about where Maricopa is located, it's in Class G airspace. There is no man towers, so we do not need to have any types of different flight levels or heights that we have to adhere to because we're not in restricted airspace because we don't have commercial planes that go through here. We will go the extra mile, though, to have a radio that's capable of sending out basically our tail number when we fly to any plane that's in the area that's listening, mostly helicopters, to let them know that we're going to be launching, we're going to be in this area, and here we come, basically.
Ricky, how does that work with the Aqchen Airport? While it's not commercial flights, like you said, you
Right.
have individual planes that might be listening, but again, a little different there.
Well, good question, Mayor. So the Aqchen Airport or regional airport that they have there has an unmanned tower. It's basically takeoff and flight by the pilot themselves. We will be able to get on their frequency or their radio and let them know that we're launching and where we're going to be. So it's as much their responsibility as our responsibility to be aware of the two. However, we have a greater responsibility because we're a law enforcement agency, a public safety agency, to look out for the greater good of who's in the air and obviously who's on the ground. So in that case, if it ever becomes commercial and they get a man tower, then we'll have to request an exemption, put in a flight plan on how high we can fly, where we can fly, and what our parameters are going to be. So on the limitations, generally below 400 feet, no flight over people, even down to cars. If somebody's standing next to a car, if they're in the car, we can fly. If they're outside the car, we can't. We're not going to fly it on 347. We're not going to fly it over crowds. It'll be used to be away from areas and basically use the camera, the technology that's on there with the 3x zoom.
Councilman Wade.
So that means that events that we have, public events, are not supposed to fly over that activity?
Correct. We can't fly over people. We can fly around people or find a flight path that's not directly over any individual or people that are in a group. But because we got the 3x zoom camera, we can stay far enough back at a higher distance and still be able to zoom in and get a better view of what is there. So we spent a little more on the technology to be able to be safer. We've actually gone above and beyond with the Part 107 to train our pilots so we're safer, just from a standpoint of risk is really what it is.
Councilman Chapados.
Ricky, how would this work in a situation where you may have, let's say, a vehicular accident and you have somebody that you don't know if it's a victim, a suspect, whatever, but they've left the vehicle and they're on foot running? Can you use this? And then the other variable is you do have injuries, so you need to dispatch and get evac in here. How does that work with all that stuff going on?
Well, so there's good question, Councilwoman. There's two questions in one. So if we were mapping the scene of an accident or a collision with injuries, there wouldn't be anybody in the vehicle while we're doing that. If we have airvac coming in or whatever, we would be out of the way for them to land. We would give them priority. Obviously, they have priority over it. If the person runs and flees and they're no longer in that area, we will declare that we're going up. Airvac should be listening, and we'll try to stay away from their area. If we need to, we'll land the unit, bring it back and land it, and then redeploy once airvac has landed and done what they need to do. So we're going to be very cautious of other planes and other helicopters especially in the area. So,
Vice Mayor.
Ricky, I have two questions. The first one is, what kinds of activities would trigger deployment? And secondly, who's in charge of deployment?
it's a good question, Vice Mayor. So in our policy, it gives specifics on who can basically request the UAS to be flown under what specific type of incidents. So we will not use it for surveillance. We will use it for missing children, vehicle collisions. We will use it for dangerous situations. Let's say we have a barricaded subject and we need to have information from that particular residence to be able to give back to our SRT team to make a greater decision on how they're going to go in and effectively do what they need to do to enter the house. The highest ranking person on the street has the ability to request the unit. However, in the policy, the pilot in charge of the PIC has the authority to say we can't fly because of these factors. So ultimately, the highest person on the street or highest ranking official on the street has the ability to request the unit, and then it's up to the pilot to determine whether it can be flown. Of course, there's going to be special circumstances where if we really need to fly that unit, we are going to fly that unit. So I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, thank you.
And also, just so you're aware, the UAS policy is on our website under our Resource Center in the Police Department, so it's visible for anybody to see.
So Ricky, once the request is made, what's the response time before the unit is available and up in the air?
We're training 7 different pilots to come out. Chief pilot himself is from Castro Grande, so drive time from there. The unit will be here at our main station, and all of our pilots, we have some that live in the city, some that don't live in the city. Basically, if the unit is going to fly, I'm coming out anyway, so I can be an observer and we can have a pilot. So 15 to 20 minutes maximum time depending on who we get a hold of, where we need to be, and which we get set up. I kind of put it together before you guys got here to show you what the final product is, but it's very simple and very easy to put together. It's already basically together. You just unhook those little red clips you see and you drop the arms down. That's really it, and you insert the batteries. So 30-minute call-out time.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Ricky, one of my major concerns for our city is always the privacy of citizens.
Yes.
So I love the tool. I love that in the situations that you've described that we would have a tool that might be able to aid significantly. My main concern was on the policy and the mission of this tool. And I will go out and look at the policy. Thank you. I wish we would have had that in the staff notes so that we could have looked at it ahead of time. And you've given some good examples of when it would be used. So, a couple questions. It's not a tool that's going to be used to go out and do reconnaissance for data gathering with no purpose. Like, there's not an incident, there's not a child missing. You're just going to send this tool out and tour the city and take pictures of various. I want to make sure that that is not the purpose of this tool.
Councilmember, great question.
Is that clear enough?
I understand.
Okay.
The only time that the unit's going to be used when it is not called out is going to be for training purposes. The pilots will have to fly so much time to be able to keep their certification and keep up on the equipment. When that's flown, and any time it's flown, it's going to be logged. So there'll be a log of when they log into the DJI flight control systems, where they were at, where they went, how far the duration is. It's going to be recording that information. And what's good about this particular unit is it integrates with evidence.com. So we're able to take any of that information and send it through. This unit will not fly unless it's authorized to fly for a situation that's need be, other than training. We will not do reconnaissance, we will not do surveillance with the unit unless we need it for, let's say, a special response situation. Specific situation.
Reason.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. My second question is regarding the cost of storage, because I'm sure it's gathering data and you're storing that. And as we know, the cost of on-body cameras is pretty astronomical. And so now this brings into question, what will the storage cost for data be and how are we paying for that? And then associated with that, does all of the information on every trip that it takes become a matter of public record?
Mayor Price, Councilwoman Smith, to answer your first question, if we need this for surveillance, the same rules apply as always. You have to have a search warrant. Fourth Amendment rights, we take extremely seriously. We're not going to violate them. If there is a public safety need, we will go through the court system just like we always do to gain court system approval to use the unmanned aerial system for that purpose. All other incidents, this is strictly an investigative tool. After the event happened, this is able to use its GPS coordinates within 3 inches. Give or take 3 inches, so if you fly it over the top of an accident scene, within 3 inches, it's going to spot the GPS coordinates and be able to feed it into our system to be able to draw the diagram. Outdoor, large crime scenes, it'll be able to do the same thing. And we've had a couple of them over the years, so this would have come in extremely handy to be able to do that. When it comes to the storage system, we've been working very closely with IT. We had already been approved to purchase another server so that we have a redundant backup to our Spillman records management system. And I've been assured that through that additional server, we will have more than enough storage space to be able to store the video, and then the retention rules continue to automatically purge it after its retention period. And yes, it is subject matter to public records requests.
So Chief Stahl, every mission that it takes, whether it be a training mission, whether it be a specific problematic safety issue, is every trip logged and available for the public to be privy to?
Mayor Price, Councilwoman Smith, yes, it is.
All right.
We will keep those things. It is our mission. The reason we're here tonight is to be fully transparent and to make sure that when people know that we have this system, they don't think we're using it for something that we're not,
Right.
It's not intended to
Right.
use.
And that's why I bring up the questions, is
And-
I want the public to know what your intentions are.
And that's why we're here publicly tonight. We could have
Perfect.
shown this in e-session and kept it a secret, but all that does is lead to more questions. We want to be fully transparent. There are many agencies throughout metropolitan Phoenix and in fact the nation that are looking at this system. Some are already using them, but some are not yet using them, and we're extremely fortunate to be in Class G airspace, so we are able to use this thing. And because we're doing the testing for Part 107 that they'll go into just a little bit further, we will be able to assist other agencies in their needs should they need it as well.
All right, thank you, Chief Stahl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky.
Other questions? Go ahead.
So I believe I left off at FAA limitations, generally below 400 feet, no flight over people involved, or no flight over people that are not involved with the UAS. Public aircraft only COA Part 107 operation, so it falls under those rules and those guidelines when we fly. Daytime operations unless operation permits by a COA Part 107 waiver. We have our 107 waiver, so we're able to fly at night. So a synopsis of Part 107. Class G airspace is where we're at, so it doesn't require ATC notification or air traffic control notification. That's why with the Auction Regional Airport, we don't have to make notification because they don't have an ATC. Class B, C, D, E operations have to have permit by the ATC, air traffic control. These are going to be like the Mesas, the Tempe's, those areas that have manned, and they're very difficult to get those exemptions and requests for a FAA to allow it. No operation for moving aircraft, so you can't fly one while you're in an aircraft. Operation for moving vehicles under sparse populated areas. They do have, some of them do have the ability they call follow me mode, where you can push a button and it'll follow you and it'll picture where you're at. This could come in good if we were doing, let's say, a collision where it was a long scene where they were driving. We could put the cars where they're at by following it that way. External loads are okay, but no hazmat. We cannot carry hazmat. And pre-flight inspection is required, just like you would a normal aircraft. Operators may control one aircraft at one time, so we're not going to have multiples in the air being flown by the same people.
But what's an example of an external load? Could you weaponize it, in other words?
FAA does not allow weaponization of these units. An external load with this particular one, because it has a payload of, is it 12 pounds? At least 12 pounds payload this thing can carry. Let's just say in the worst case scenario, we had somebody that was in a canal, or we weren't able to get to them, we can come back, we could load up a life preserver, hook it to that, take it, and drop it. If we find somebody that's lost, we can mark that area where they were at using the software that's available for the system, fly a unit back, pick up water, take it, and drop it. So the application for that is what the payload means. We couldn't pick up a bomb and take it and drop it off. We couldn't pick up any type of hazardous material and fly it away like you would see like in a movie or something. It's not allowable by FAA standards.
Thank you.
So synopsis of Part 107 pilots, establish remote pilot certification. So the prerequisite for just the general public is 16 years or older. Be vetted by the Transportation Safety Administration. The TSA has to vet you. Pass an aeronautical knowledge test by FAA-approved testing center, or be Part 61 certified pilot other than a student. Complete online courses. There's a website for it. And then you have to have a current or biannual review of your certifications, your training, and your standards to make sure that they're in line. And then Part 61 pilots must complete an online refresher course biannually. So it's basically the same thing. Continuous training is what it is. Remote pilots only must take knowledge exam biannually. So our remote pilots will have to take a biannual test. I believe there hasn't been one yet because Part 107 is so new. So we don't know what Could it be on the test? It's going to be the same thing? It's going to be more stuff? We don't know because it's all new to the FAA. No airworthiness certificates required for COAs. Maintenance records must be maintained. So we have a hard book that has to be filled out whenever you fly. Each individual pilot will have a login to the DJI system, which will track when they logged in, the takeoff, the speed, the duration of the flight, the hours of their particular sign-in, where it was. In case of a catastrophic failure, it will tell me that I was on power up, I was on power down, I was left, I was right, what I was doing, it will tell me. This particular model, as you can see to the one next to it, is a helicopter 6 blades. This unit can lose 2 propellers and safely land. With the other one, you use one, it's gonna go down automatically. So it's built on a carbon fiber frame. It's got pretty much the latest technology. We already have other agencies requesting, where did you get this from? You know, how can we get this? Requesting our flight manual, requesting our policies on it to be able to move forward. Other than the Pinal County Attorney's Office, in the Pinal County, we're the only ones that have this technology, other than Gila River, but they're kind of dual between Maricopa County and Pinal County. And we're the only one with this particular Matrice 600. Aircraft must be registered. We'll have it registered. We'll have a tail number for it. So it's just going to give you the rules and when they were established, what they mean for daytime operations, the flight levels, the exemptions for nights, so on and so forth, which I kind of already touched on. Now the advantages: nationwide operation, standardization for pilots requirements. So all pilots that take 107 know exactly what you're going to do, what I'm going to do when it comes to how they can fly and what the requirements are. The disadvantages: pilots must complete online courses, if not manned exams, so they have to go to school. There's additional FAA oversight, which where I come into play, where I keep all the records and so on and so forth to be able to make sure that everything is where we need it to be. So you need a secure waiver for night, airspace, etc. So community engagement, big one. We've had other agencies, we've had media, local and Valley Media, see that we received one of these, and they've been calling asking, can we see this? Can we do a story? Can we do this another? And the answer was no. We want to present it to our council first. We want to present it to our citizens first. Let them know what it is, how it's going to work, where our policies are at, what we're planning on doing with it, how we're going to utilize it before we'll do anything with anybody else. And it's kind of been a little hectic when it comes to dealing with that. We wanted to give you first dibs on what it looks like, how it's going to operate, and any questions you have, because you represent the city. So we want to invite media to observe scenario-based training, so we can show how it's used, how we're going to use it when it comes to training, what the cameras and how the systems works. We want to solicit public comments. You can email me, my information is on the city website. You can get a hold of us via social media. You can come to the police department if you want to and ask questions, or even in forums like this. We want to grant interviews to the media, and we will be honest and straightforward. That is the main thing. We don't have anything to hide here. What you see, what the unit is and how it flies is what FAA requires, and that's how we're going to operate, because that's the way Chief wants it. So how the unit was created: we drafted a policy. We asked for people to test. We had a testing process. The people basically had to study to pass this test. It wasn't a test that you got and everybody passed. The lowest score was 88, the highest score was 96. I was very impressed by these individuals that really wanted to do this while being on patrol, working nights, so on and so forth. So moving forward, weekly they're tested on what they learned the 4 hours prior. We have 5 weeks worth of class, then 3 weeks of flight time. And then in October, around the 17th, they're going to challenge the FAA test. We're going to keep good records. A lot of it is electronically, it's online, so they're able to keep that. And we're going to be respectful of the Fourth Amendment privacy rights. Before I made this presentation, before this came to you to be seen, we contacted our city attorney, and we provided them with all the information. We said, hey, what do we need to do? What do we need to fix? These are the questions. What do you have for us so we can make sure that we're doing this right? We just want to make sure that we do it right. So we want to establish the imagery retention policy, which is going to fall under our retention policies. We're going to retain essential images under what as required for what we already do when it comes to retention. And we're going to safeguard images and evidence in evidence.com. And we're going to train regularly and realistically is the main one. And that's all I have.
Council questions? Councilmember Chapados.
2 questions. Ricky, what's the capabilities for offering this as mutual aid to another department?
Here within Pinal County, as long as we have an MOU in place and we have authorization from basically our city to say that we can enter into those types of agreements. We can fly in Pinal County and Class G airspace. We cannot go to Maricopa County. We cannot fly without getting certain exemptions, requirements, because it's really restricted in the valley agencies because of their airspace.
So it would just be an agency in Pinal County, so the reservations would be not included in that request?
As long as there's a memorandum of understanding between us and we're able to go out there and fly, since they have different rules that they require under when it comes to, I guess, prosecution of their airspace, then we can go and we can help them, obviously, with approval from Chief.
Okay. My second question centers around evidentiary involvement. Has this been tested in a court case yet? I mean, is it considered evidence that you can say, we tracked this individual, or we've got this documentation on this scene or this incident or whatever? How does that work from an evidentiary standpoint?
This is really all new,
Okay.
to be honest with you.
Yeah. Mayor, Councilmember Chapados, it's so new that I don't think we have a lot of case. I mean, we do have the cameras that officers wear already, so this has taken this to another level. But it's also very new, and I think just as Chief Stahl said earlier, if they need a warrant to see into some place, they're still going to have to go out and get that warrant. This doesn't let them bypass the Fourth Amendment at all.
Well, but let's say we've got somebody who's fleeing a scene. Can this be used to maintain the chain of custody, that we were able to track this person from X spot where he started, through the forest, through another house, through a neighborhood, whatever, because we have this footage?
I mean,
Mayor Price, Councilwoman Chapados, the same investigative policies and practices that apply to a human being walking on foot, retracing, whether it's a foot pursuit or whatever it may be, apply to the same tool. The same exact philosophies, constitutional laws, and principles apply. This is just a tool that we're able to utilize wiser, faster, and with less resources.
It's nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gussie.
How many people do you plan to go through the training and the certification process?
Mayor Price, Councilwoman Chapados, we are putting 7 people, or Councilman Gussie, I'm sorry. I'm so used to her asking questions. We are putting 7 people through the training right now. We expect all 7 to pass the test. It is rigorous training. They're going through barometric pressure training, just like any pilot would have to go through. Their pre-flight planning, all those things that a regular pilot would have to go through and a regular observer would have to go through. That's what Chief Martinez is teaching them in these classes. And every week he gives them a test so that he can keep them up to speed. And that was kind of my edict to him, is this piece of technology is, as Dennis said, very untested. I don't like case law having State of Arizona versus City of Maricopa or anything like that. So the City of Maricopa should not be on case law. And so that's what this testing is for. They're testing Fourth Amendment as much as they're testing barometric pressure and things like that. So I fully suspect, and I've seen all 7 of them take the classes seriously. In fact, one of them was having a little bit of difficulty in last week's class on barometric pressure and things, and he was in the next day on his own time studying. So you can be rest assured all 7 are taking this extremely seriously.
And one last question, are the 7 all staff, or are they a mix of volunteer and staff?
Councilwoman Gussie, they are all staff, they're all paid staff,
Okay.
but they're not all sworn. There are some civilians.
Excellent, thank you.
Vice Mayor Brown, then to Councilmember Wade.
Chief, would there ever be a reason for Homeland Security to be interested in our data gathering?
Mayor Price and Vice Mayor Brown, while there is always that chance, I cannot think, I can't forecast that request coming in. If it has to do with a national emergency or something like that, I mean, we do have the train coming through here 46 times a day, carrying hazardous chemicals at times. So that may be some sort of a Homeland Security type of request, but I don't believe that if you're alluding to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, no, that violates our policy. And even if another agency requests it, if it violates our policy, we're not using it.
Thank you.
Councilor Whedon.
Thank you, Chief. Have you done any manpower studies to determine what kind of cost savings we would have by having this as opposed to perhaps having a couple of officers doing the same thing?
Mayor Price and Councilwoman Wade, we have not. However, today, in today's incident, over 35 personnel responded to that incident from not just our jurisdiction, from surrounding jurisdictions and volunteer time for over 4.5 hours. That's over 120 man hours, about 150 man hours, of which we could have reduced that by a lot with 2 pilots, a perimeter set up, and maybe an hour and a half of time. So if I try to be as realistic as possible and not overpromise, but that's just one example of how I think we could have utilized this tool and reduced our resources quite a bit.
I have a question for Chief Martinez.
I thought I was going to get away.
I knew it. That's why I wanted to section you out there. No, I appreciate it. So my question is something that's a little more on the technical side. You know, clearly, as Ricky mentioned, there's basically a pre-flight that you go through, making sure that everything is sectioned and coordinated and you know, as best as can be from a conditions perspective. While I understand there's also a kind of a 400-foot ceiling and things are not that different, you know, in that 400 feet, but you are checking barometric pressure, you are checking the wind speeds, all those different things. One of the things that typically a manned, you know, aerial vehicle has is the ability to deal with those changing conditions in the sky as they happen, right? I mean, in theory, it's if you're in an airplane and you know, you have crosswinds coming up, you can adjust for those, you can counter those, and I know you're viewing that on the viewer at the same time. But how do we deal with that? I mean, clearly you don't want to wreck the pretty new toy, but at the same time, you know, it is not understandable when, you know, here in the first 300 feet, you know, there is a 5 mile an hour wind, but in the 400 to 600 foot level, it's a 300, you know, or excuse me, it's an 80 mile an hour wind. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yes.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, the good thing about flying a drone or a UAS is you're not flying long distances. In fact, you're required to keep it within line of sight by the FAA at all times. So the weather conditions are very close to where you're standing. And the pilots are trained to handle different kinds of wind and shifting winds. The aircraft has a GPS system which will hold it in place. But the way we're going to train it, we turn that off. So the pilots in training can see the effects of the wind. When they let go of the joysticks, they'll see the aircraft floating or moving away. So they'll acquire those skills to compensate for wind. Also, they're required to get, they spend a lot of time in class looking at weather just like a regular pilot. In fact, by the time they are done, they will have covered about 90% of what a private pilot has to go through to get the exam. So they have to learn about the weather. So they'll have to recognize different things like how wind creates patterns around buildings, things like that. So they're very weather aware as part of the training before they can get their license.
Thank you very much. That answers the question.
If I could also add, sir, there is a home button on this. So if for whatever reason there is a malfunction, it will go straight to where the home landing base was. So awesome. It won't be destroyed, it won't go down and crash land somewhere. It'll come right back home.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the explanations. Appreciate it. Any other questions, council, at this time? You have a question? What's that? Yeah, go ahead. Councilman Freddie.
Ricky, price, what did it cost and how did we pay for it?
I'll answer that. Mayor Price, Councilman Manfredi. The total cost, a little over $21,500, and because this is used for an investigative purpose, it was all purchased with asset forfeitures. So you can thank your criminals for this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions at this time? All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Very helpful. Appreciate the presentation. This will be online for those that may have missed it, but we are going to go ahead and close this meeting. Council, we're about 5 minutes out from the start of the next meeting, so we won't do e-session right now as we have a packed meeting and need to get to everything as people will continue to file in here. So with that, can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting, please? Have a motion. Is there a second? Hearing a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. We'll reconvene in about 5 to 10 minutes.